you all for coming. This is such a beautiful, amazing bookstore. It is just a pleasure to be here. And it's also a special pleasure because both my daughters live in La Cañada and my 4 grandchildren, who I was going to introduce to you, and I envisioned them sitting out here, but they are more interested in books than their grandmother, which might be a good thing. And my daughter Gillen, who's very active in Pasadena Animal League and is on the board of the Humane Society, and who the book is dedicated to, is here. So, I'll tell you how this book came about, and we've been waiting. I was a little in confusion because the person I introduced first is not here, but he will eventually show up, and then I will introduce him. I want to tell you a little bit about how this book came about. 2 years ago, my horse in Montana, Robin, died, and I was absolutely devastated. And I wrote a post on my blog about him, saying how much I had adored him, and I had come to horseback riding rather late in life. I didn't, at an age where most people do not take up horseback riding, so I didn't have a clue to what I was doing with this horse, and who my husband had bought at auction. For $500. He was a retired U.S. Forest trail horse, and he was just so incredibly gentle. He made me feel like his own personal horse whisperer. And he knew full well when I got on him that I didn't have a clue to what I was doing, but he never took advantage of it. So I did a post on my blog about how much I had adored this horse and how much I was missing him. And I got a lot of wonderful comments from readers, including one from a veterinarian who is also my friend and my student, who hasn't arrived yet, who wrote that there should be an anthology of such pieces by writers about loving an animal and then losing it, what it's like at the end. And I thought, wow, that's the kind of book I would like to read right now. And if it's not available, I would like to put it together. So I did a lot of research, and there was no book like this about all different kinds of animals, because there's a pig, and there are horses, and of course cats and dogs. There's even a coyote in this book. So I emailed all the writers that I love, the ones I know, and the ones I didn't know. I emailed Jane Smiley and asked her if she had an essay for me. And all the responses were so positive and encouraging. I knew that I had a book to put together. So so the book came about and was published by New World Library, and it just came out last month. And wonderful things are happening. One of the essays was published in O Magazine this month, and another essay is going to be in the Ladies' Home Journal, and I just found out it's going to be in Coldwater Creek catalog, which sort of stopped me dead in my tracks. I thought, well, they sold sweaters or something, but apparently they're going to sell this book, which is a very good thing. Somebody asked me the other day, what is the message of this book? And I have Nelson speaking. And the message is, hello, come sit down. What is the message of my book? Okay, the message is that you are not, crazy and strange if you've lost an animal and you're grieving for this animal. C.S. Lewis once wrote that we read to know that we're not alone. And that's what I hope this book will do for people. And also, it's not all sad. You don't really need, well, maybe a few people will need a few Kleenexes maybe, but it's also I think there are very funny things in the book, yes. And it's about the whole arc of an animal's life. And I'm going to read you just a bit of my introduction, and then I'm going to hand it over to my posse. I am such a fan of all the writers in this book that I feel like a groupie, and I get to show up with the band and all these things. Okay, I've always lived with an animal or multiple animals. When my daughters were growing up, we had 3 dogs, 4 cats, and a rabbit. One of the dogs was a Newfoundland named Jennifer, who was the size of a small bear and loved to sleep in our bed with her huge head on the down pillows. One of the cats, Crazy Alice, insisted on sleeping in our bathroom sink. Another cat, Jaeger, got hit by a car, had his pelvis crushed and rebuilt, along with an expensive tail amputation, and then, after he recovered, raced out into traffic again to have his jaw shattered, and once more survived. Our cats then became indoor cats. And Sydney, the youngest of the cat gang, would fish tampon tubes out of waste paper baskets, and then appear jauntily holding one in his mouth as if smoking a cigarette. Then there was Weinsberg, the cat I rescued in New York when I was still a teenager. When she died almost 2 decades later, we had been on a long journey together, both in miles and time. Half my life, in fact. Here's the thing about losing animals. They take a piece of your life with them when they die. They love the best in you, they share your days and nights, and then they're gone and there's a hole in your life, this vanished past they've taken with them. Last summer when I returned to Montana, I visited Robin's grave out in the pasture by the river. This dear, valiant horse whose gentleness and patience gave me the gift of knowing and loving a horse, who made me a whole lot braver than I actually was. I remember how he smelled of wind and hay, the softness behind his ears, the way he'd nuzzle me when he hadn't seen me for a while, and gratitude began to move the sadness out of my heart.